Hello, everyone, and welcome to the show. I'm your host, John Wachter. Let's get you informed. Today's episode is going to be about Peyton Manning's legacy and what this, just terrible season has done for it. Peyton's had an awful season, especially for a guy who's been so good for so long. But this season's been bad for just anybody. Any quarterback to put together a season like this, you would say, is probably out of the starting job. Only 9 touchdowns thus far into the season. That's 28th in the league. There's 32 teams in the league. The math isn't very hard to do, especially when you consider a guy like Tony Romo has been injured all year pretty much, and there's teams with that that haven't had the same starting quarterback every game and things of that nature. So that's a very bad stat. To make it even worse, 17 interceptions, which leads the league by a whole lot. Second place is 12, which is 5 less, which is a huge number. When you look at the percentages there, 12 is for Andrew Luck, if I'm not mistaken. He also has a 67.6 quarterback rating, which is the absolute bottom in the league for anybody with over 150 attempts. 25th in yards per game, and there's no way around it. This is just a very bad season for whatever reason. Near the end of last season, we started to see him regress. Like it was almost as if age had caught up to him at the end of the season, because in the beginning of last season it looked like it wasn't as good as 2 seasons ago where he was out there setting records for passing yards and passing touchdowns. But by the end of last year he was looking bad. He was looking like a guy who shouldn't be on the field, and a bad preseason and now just a terrible season. You have to wonder how close is Peyton Manning to being done. And unfortunately, it's my personal opinion, without having his contract situation or anything like that memorized, and also just knowing that any player that can retire at any time, I think this is Peyton Manning's last year. He's still on a playoff team, of course. They've dropped their last 2, but they started off 7-0, so they all but a lock, unless they have a catastrophic failure, all but a lock to make the playoffs. And maybe he can work magic one more time, go back to his old self, but unfortunately, it's looking like he's going to be the type of player that goes out with more of a kind of like a Brett Favre kind of nature, where he came back one more year after the playoff run and just it didn't have the success. You want to see a guy like that. In my opinion, if Peyton Manning had maybe even if he had won the Super Bowl in that year where he set the record for passing yards and touchdowns, if he had won the Super Bowl that year, no doubt in my mind he would have retired. It would have been a storybook ending. He wanted to come back one more year. It didn't happen last year. Maybe one more year. It's not happening now. But now he has to understand how much he's regressing. With that said, he's left back an absolutely incredible legacy. There was a great quote a couple weeks ago by Michael Bennett of the Seahawks. He said that the only thing that could ruin Peyton Manning's legacy is if he dated a Kardashian. And I think that's about right. And you know what? I would even give Peyton Manning the pass on that. If that's what he wants to do, stay young, do you, Peyton? But I don't. He's not the kind of guy. I don't see that happening. His legacy, the all-time leader in passing yards, which is a record he just broke in that absolutely abysmal game he had last week. 71,871 pass yards. All-time touchdown leader with 539. All-time quarterback rating, he's 5th highest with a 96.5. That's among people with a 5 or more years of experience. Russell Wilson's actually higher than him when I was looking at the list, but I don't think that's going to continue to stand. 186 wins, ties the all-time lead with Brett Favre, and you know what? He might not even get another start this year. It depends on what Brock Osweiler does and how bad this injury is to Peyton Manning's foot. It's looking at it. There's almost half the season still left. It's very feasible that Peyton Manning can get that one more win, but it's also just looking at how quickly he's regressing, it's still up in the air. It's not a given that it looks like it might be. I remember when, like 10 years ago, a little bit more than 10 years ago, when I first started watching football and really getting into it, there was all this talk about Peyton Manning being the best to never win a Super Bowl, which had a lot of meaning because, Dan Marino never won a Super Bowl. He's a Hall of Famer and one of the greatest of all time. Fortunately, he did win one after the 2006 season, pretty much right in the middle of his career, and that's the only Super Bowl he's ever won. It's very surprising he didn't win more. He's the 14-time Pro Bowler. All these first-team All-Pros, an NFL record 5 MVPs. Second place is only 3. It's shared by a couple people. Not a lot of people have won the MVP more than once. He's done it 5 times, just absolutely dominant, consistent throughout his whole career. He's had at least 26 touchdowns every single year of his career, including his rookie year up until this point, and has thrown for over 4,000 yards 14 times in his 18-year career. 271 yards per game over the course of that time span, and that's just an absolutely insane level to keep up. Uh, but I think the thing that everybody will remember the most about Peyton Manning is just how well he played in the clutch. And there was always this misconception, in my opinion, that he choked in the playoffs, and I don't think that was the case. This isn't a guy that choked under pressure. He's a guy that came completely prepared for every game, and it was his work ethic that kept him on top. This is a guy, absolutely no arm strength. In my opinion, the weakest arm of any quarterback in the NFL. There are some wide receivers with better arms than him. Mohamed Sanu played quarterback in high school or college or whatever it may be, in my opinion, has a stronger arm than Peyton Manning. I literally think that he could throw the ball farther than him, but Peyton was still getting it done. Even when he was setting all those records a couple years ago, it wasn't because of his arm strength. It was because he could read a defense better than anybody, and he put the work in, and he made the adjustments. There's that iconic photo of him with his foot in the water trying to heel it while he's wearing his helmet, and he's reading all he's watching film, whether that be practice or film on his opponent, and that's just the kind of guy that he was. He's over there, he's healing, he can't be in the practice at the time, so he, in his own situation while he's healing, he's continuing to do the research. And a lot of guys would just say, all right, let's make it an early day, especially after 15 career years at that point, 15 or 16, whatever he was at. A lot of guys would just say, if I can't continue this practice, I'll just rest up my foot, maybe come back later this week. He was just so in it still, and it's just absolutely insane that he was so motivated to come to work for so long. I mean, I've had my job for, like 8 months. It's nowhere near as physically demanding, and I don't have to put forth the amount of effort that this guy's doing. And there's some days where I just don't feel like doing it. I don't know how you can do it for 18 years, but kudos to him. And I think that's what made him great for so long. I remember all these comebacks. The one against the Chargers, for example, they were down something crazy, like 24-0. I believe it was. It was either a Sunday night or a Monday night game. I remember watching it. I didn't want to turn it off because I knew Peyton Manning. As early as his rookie season, he had a game against, I believe, the Jets. Scored a game winner with less than a minute left. He's done it so many times. I kept watching that game. He came back, and it was just one of the greatest comebacks I've ever seen. It was almost as if, Joe Montana is another guy, Tom Brady, all these guys. It's like, you get the ball in his hand. If he has the last possession and it's a one-score game and he needs to, drive you in the field goal range or even score a touchdown, 9 times out of 10 he was going to do it. And it was just so entertaining to watch, unless he was against your team, and it was just so frustrating because you already knew it was going to happen, but you had so much hope. And, most of the time, there might have been a few hiccups here and there, but like I said, 9 times out of 10 he was going to win that game. A personal favorite moment was his comeback win against the Patriots in the AFC Championship, his Super Bowl year. And this is why I don't understand how people can say he choked in the playoffs. They were down 21-3. It was right after he threw a pick six. So I mean, after I said he didn't choke, that's what I'm going to bring up. But down 21-3. Peyton Manning and the Colts, they stormed back. They won that game 38-34, which included 32 points in the second half. And he had the game winner. It wasn't the very last possession, but it was very close to the end of the fourth quarter. Game-winning 80-yard touchdown drive, just absolute money in the clutch, and that's what he's going to be remembered for the most. As far as this season, I don't think this taints his legacy. It's going to be sad, to look back on it and say it ended this way. You always want to end it on a high note, but Peyton Manning has just about every single NFL regular season record. He has a Super Bowl win and a definite place in Canton. This is a guy whose legacy can't be tarnished no matter what. Even with this awful season, yes, it's going to be sad to look back on, but I think as history progresses, we might even forget that this season ever happened. We're just going to remember Peyton Manning breaking records and getting so close to getting into another Super Bowl by the end of his career. And he's going to remain in the media in the NFL. He's either going to get a coaching gig, or a lot of people want to see him as the commissioner. I don't know. Peyton Manning is going to remain around for a long time, and that's good for the sport. He's a genuinely great guy and just one of the greatest players to ever play the game. I think Michael Bennett's right. I don't think there's anything that could tarnish this guy's legacy. But that's just my opinion, and that's where I'm going to end this episode. If you have a different opinion or if you agree with me, feel free to comment. But until then, see you next time.